Oscar not here, I gather, but we want to thank him. He is the commander of the Human Trafficking Task Force out of our Human Trafficking Division. Now, trafficking is all about money. It's a $150 billion industry worldwide and a $32 billion industry in the United States. Florida ranks third in the United States in the number of victims of human trafficking, and Miami ranks #1 in Florida in the number of human trafficking victims. We like being #1 in a whole lot of good things, but not in this area. And so in 2012, we created, my human trafficking unit created, along with all of our law enforcement partners, which was designed to combat this inhumane crime that preys on our innocence and the vulnerability of our youth and treats them as human ATM machines. To exploiters, human trafficking is more profitable than any other types of crimes that we cover. You can sell a drug once, and it's gone. You can sell a gun, and it's gone. But you can sell a young person, their body, exploit them up to 20 times a day, up to 7 days a week. Those are national averages, and those are also ours. Our human trafficking unit is designed to rescue victims while vigorously pursuing those who sexually exploit and, in many cases, torture them in the process. In the last 13 years, our task force has worked with over 1,356 victims, and we have filed approximately 943 human trafficking-related criminal cases. I believe this is unmatched anywhere else. And I want to show you on the screen there the agencies. This is all about collaboration and teamwork. One of the things about Miami-Dade County is we don't have boundaries by municipalities. Yes, we have 37 municipalities and 35 police departments and other partners at the federal and state and local level. But you know what? We work together, and together is what makes us so successful in rooting out this crime. And let's look at that. You'll see all the departments, state, federal, local, that are involved in our human trafficking unit. So, as I said, the collaboration is what makes this work. We use the leverage and the resources and the intelligence that each one of our agencies has, and we put it together, we put that expertise together, while allowing all of us to cross over many of the jurisdictional lines so that the bad guys can't get away with going into one municipality or the other. Those municipalities, when it comes to human trafficking, there are no boundaries. This mean, lean machine is after them. So, during the past couple of years, we've obtained funding from the Florida legislature and our South Florida high-intensity drug trafficking area. It's called HIDA, for those of you that don't know. And the leader, Hugo Barrera, wanted to be with us today, but he was unable to join us. But we thank him publicly for his support. And so we expanded our efforts. And during the past couple of weeks alone, we've had numerous arrests of traffickers and rescues of victims, which I want to speak to today. So we're going to start with, in somewhat a chronological order. These are the charges involving Robertson and Thomas. This past Saturday, November 22nd, our Human Trafficking Task Force members led Daryl Lamont Robertson, Jr., and Usun Ileana Thomas. We'll refer to them as Robertson and Thomas. Robertson is charged with 6 felonies, including human trafficking, commercial sex activity, and also human trafficking, commercial sex activity by transporting from out of state into state. Both of these are first-degree felonies. We also then have other charges, including deriving funds, the proceeds from prostitution. Thomas, who is known as the Bottom, is charged with trafficking, commercial sex activity, first-degree felony. So, back to November 22nd. At about 2 a.m., Miami Springs Public Police Department responded to a 911 call. It was made by the victim, who was staying at a Miami Springs hotel after she was beaten by Robertson. when she told the officer that what had happened was she got beaten by him because when she told Robertson that she no longer wanted to perform commercial sex acts, he beat her, which is very common. So upon hearing this on the 911 call, the Miami Springs patrol officer, who's very experienced in this area, responded, and he called our human trafficking task force. And that's when this incredible investigation began. So if you look up on the next screen there, you'll see that the victim, in this case, was brought by the Miami Springs Police Department and part of our human trafficking task force officers to this center here. Now, I bring this to your attention. It has no address. That's intentional. This is only human trafficking center that I'm aware of that exists. And you'll see that it's one building, 5 floors, and each floor has dedicated personnel that only deals with victims of human trafficking. So the victim comes to this building with the police, meets with our victims advocates, and it's a place where victims can feel safe. They decompress because oftentimes they're drugged out, which is exactly what their exploiters want. They get to clean up. There's shower. There's provisions for them. There's food, clothing, toiletry items that they need. And then they are able to speak in a safe place to the law enforcement officers to tell their horrid story. So what happens there is, in addition to the law enforcement piece, there's also that victim's advocate that I just mentioned to you. That victim's advocate, one of the many roles is bonding with the victim, building a trust, but it's also dealing with her other needs. So, for instance, the victim needs shelter, clothing, medical attention. That's what they get from that victim's advocate. So in this case, what the victim unfolds when she's there at the center talking to the police and the detectives, she says that the victim, who, by the way, says that she met Robertson, who's the pimp, and Thomas, who's the bottom, in Dallas, Texas. The relationship between the victim and Robertson seemed to be romantic at first, but it quickly transitioned to the victim having to engage in sex dates under the direction and supervision of the co-defendants. So before coming to Miami, Robertson and Thomas took the victim. They took her to New Orleans, Memphis, Galveston, Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York, Washington. And we've talked about this before, how there's a complete cycle of distribution centers where people are really going to from one destination to the other. And this is one of those cases. She was forced in those places to go on dates, sex dates. In fact, she had a mandatory quota of making $1,000 a day. And all the money that she suffered through to obtain was provided and given to Robertson. So about 8 months after these horrific months, I should say, this lifestyle, if you want to call it that, there's all that time she had been controlled and drugged, beaten and trafficked by Thompson and Robertson. And when you look at the A-forms where it lays out all these facts, you'll see that in that affidavit, these are the things that she personally alleges. So approximately 1 week ago, after traveling around the United States, Robertson purchased a flight for the victim to Miami, where she was instructed to meet him and Thomas. Robertson and Thomas decided to drive to Miami. The victim brought her 2-year-old little daughter with her. So Robertson, his job was to transport the victim's daughter to a daycare during the day so the victim could work her sex acts during the day. So, upon arriving, the victim was taken to an area it's known here in Miami as The Blade. It's on 27th Avenue. And again, ordered the victim to meet the quota of $1,000 a day, and she did that. Sometimes it was car dates, sometimes it was short-term motel rentals right in that area. She was constantly being monitored and surveilled by the two of them. They would drive around the streets and around the hotel watching her. He would also arrange alcohol dates for her. The victim, which is so common in all these cases, was given drugs such as Adderall. And each day it would keep her up. That's why they would give her her those drugs. It would keep her up through the night, and then when she wanted to quit, they would just beat her. And this occurred throughout the entire relationship, especially when she would plead and object to continuing to go out on these dates. The victim also said in her affidavit that she feared retaliation from Thomas. So during the past week in Miami, the victim stayed in the hotel room I told you about in Miami Springs. The hotel room was actually booked in the bottom's name, which Thomas paid for. This is where the officers, remember I told you they initially contacted her. They responded to that hotel room with her 911 call. Robertson, however, didn't stay there. He stayed in an Airbnb in the city of Miami, where eventually, while the victim was meeting and giving her testimony to the detectives, the other detectives were out going to the city of Miami to get him and have him arrested. Additionally, we've talked about this before at these press conferences, sadly. We know that a lot of these traffickers, these pimps, tattoo, they brand their subjects. It's a form of control, manipulation, and a way in which they strip these victims of any self-dignity. So what they did do, the two of them, they took the victim to a tattoo parlor where they had her get a tattoo of an image of a red stiletto. You'll see there, I don't know if we showed the other one first, but you'll see there that the name Heffy, our pronunciation, described below it. You see the H there? If you look over in the farther left square there, the rectangle, you'll see what looks like a stiletto shoe. For you gentlemen that may not know what that means, a stiletto. It's in red, and you'll see that the H is there. And then if you look at her arm, which is the next photograph there, you'll see printed on her forearm is the name Daryl, which is the first name. That is the bottom there. And then if you look at the other shot of the victim, do we have that there? The other victim, okay, well, the same exact tattoo was placed on our victim, and it became infected. So with that, we were able to conclude that part of the case. And there is the other tattoo. I'm sorry, it took us a moment to upload that. No, could you go back? I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, I don't know if you caught that. If you didn't, let us know, and we will. There you go. It's back. So you'll see there, that's on our victims, the one we just told you about, which he's been living through. Again, it's the high heel, and his name, well, his nickname, in Spanish, I think we call it apodo, is in Spanish, and that's his nickname, Heffy. So with that, we were able to conclude that part of the case. And again, I want to thank all of those who are involved in that. So now, I just want to briefly mention another case that I know you already know about. It was reported in the newspapers and in your outlets. All of you did a great job covering this. And it dealt with the Sartui, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Coutriu. And you already know this person. He's been arrested. He's been charged with 2 cases of human trafficking. As I told you on the other case, the charges were just filed today. And in this case, formal charges were also filed. You may remember this involves a 17-year-old who was being trafficked by the defendant, who has a boat charter business. It started as a romance, and of course it escalated into what we now know is human trafficking. I want to also congratulate the Beach Police Department for all their great work that they did in this case. We have been, thanks to you and the media, we received a number of calls from other potential victims, so we're not going to go into any more detail. But had it not been for you, we wouldn't have had those other phone calls. And so this case is now in a continuing the investigation, but the formal charges were filed today. And again, we know that there are other victims out there. We want you to know that we all stand ready and able to continue to prosecute those that continue to exploit you. So come forward. We'll give you the call name out in just a few minutes. So let's also now talk about something that really occurred in Coral Gables. This will be our third reference. Our third reference is, we're calling it Operation Sanctuary Shield. It occurred in the beautiful city of Coral Gables on November 20th. This is just a few days. You can see the task force and the lawyers have been very, very busy. But what they did in Coral Gables was really incredible. So what we could just slow that down a bit and just talk about all the different pieces that went into this Operation Shield that was led by our chief here. And of course, it included the Coral Gables Police Department. They were the leaders. They were they guided us. It included our City of Miami Police Department. It included Doral Police Department. And this is where I mentioned to you at the outset where HSI was so very helpful. And I'll give you some insight into how that was very helpful. We also, Secret Service, they're just always a great partner. They're always by our side helping us. And of course, our Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office, they're always a great partner with us, and our Medley PD. So talk about our task force, and the chief may expand on this, but you know, we look at all the various types of undercover operations. You can't just always say we're just going to go after the pimps, or we're just going to go after the demand side with the Johns. We're not just going to go after prostitution. It has to be the whole facet of all of that that creates this multi-billion-dollar industry where they exploit our victims. So the overall goal, as I said earlier, rescue victims, any part of a victim, any type of activity that she or he may be involved in, and then try to identify not just the traffickers, but the other people who are helping facilitate that, like drivers. How do some of the victims or prostitutes, how do they get to the different places? And so that was really a very helpful job that the operation did in Coral Gables, because again, we were able to make, I think it was 6 arrests, and we're not going to go into a lot of specifics because again, it's undercover and it's continuing, but I can tell you that they were extremely successful in this operation, and because it led us to other parts of human trafficking groups. It also allowed us to collect intelligence and be able to identify who these people were that were involved in going to a hotel, taking people to meet Johns for purposes of selling sex. And how do we do that? Well, we did that with our partners in large part with HSI. And I thanked Jose earlier, and we're all thanked him earlier, and we're going to thank him again, because they have technology that, unfortunately, chiefs, none of us have at the local state level. And they were able to, on the scene, as these cars were pulling up, identify the drivers and plug them into a computer system, not unlike something like our phones. I forget whose phone this is, forgive me, and plug a face into that and identified almost immediately who we were dealing with. Who were these officers dealing with? Who were these lawyers targeting? Who were these folks that were coming and going to this hotel? And so that was incredible assistance to us, and we're really grateful to you. And so in the course of this operation, our office, as I said, made 6 different arrests, 4 of whom were recent arrivals from Venezuela and had existing deportation orders. I can tell you that this operation served as a wonderful preparatory groundwork for larger scale enforcement efforts that we're going to be talking about. They're going to be upcoming in just a few months, really. They'll be starting up. And so these are the different types of techniques and strategies that we are using. So let's talk about that for a minute. We mentioned some different cases, some different types of operations that we use, different types of crimes and how they're committed, but they all are part of this ugly scourge of human trafficking. So one of the reasons we're standing here together is because, as you're going to see up there on the screen, this beautiful city that we live in is loved by many all over the world. And so in 2026, Miami will host more and bigger events than ever before, ever even imagined. Starting in January, we will host the Orange Bowl, the NHL Winter Classic, the World Baseball Classic, the Miami Open, Ultra Music Festival, the PGA Tour, Miami Grand Prix, the FIFA World Cup, and NASCAR Cup Series Championships. We're going to be really busy, all of us, and we're going to need each other, and we're going to need you in the media. But we want everyone who's looking at this to know we're going to be receiving millions of wonderful visitors who want to come and celebrate this glorious city that we live in. And we want them to do that. We welcome them with open arms, and we'll be ready. But we also know with the good guys come the bad guys. There'll be a lot more good guys than bad guys, but we have to be ready, and we are going to be ready. And that's why I'm so grateful to all of you standing here so that we can show our community and anyone else who's looking and thinking to come here that we're not going to tolerate. We are organized, and we are ready to pounce on anybody that is going to exploit our vulnerable folks. So, to conclude, I just want everyone to know this is the hotline to the task force. And any one of us, that's the one where the Miami Springs, as an example, the lieutenant reached out to our task force. Miami Beach, Coral Gables. This is the center of the pulse of where people should be sending their information. And then the whole task force, no matter where it is, we all engage, we work together, and we do everything that's humanly possible to help identify human trafficking and put it to a halt. So with that, I'm just very grateful again. Please get this message out. And I would like then to all of you to know this is a 24/7 hotline. It's nonstop. You can call it now. You can test it. And you will see that someone will answer that phone, and we will immediately respond to it. So with that, before I open it to questions, I'm going to ask my colleagues here if they would like to say a few words. Chief, you're never short on words.
I'm just not short. Good afternoon. I can put this very clearly. Human trafficking is a borderless crime. And under the leadership of this task force and the state attorney, this is borderless enforcement in South Florida and in Miami-Dade County.